Well, you may have seen in newspapers this morning lots of pictures of the greatest, Muhammad Ali, the man who floats like a butterfly and stings like a bee. The legendary boxer, he is 70 today. What sort of boxer was he? What sort of man is he? Well, we've got boxing promoter Frank Warren joining us this morning. Very good morning to you, Frank. I suppose let's start with your boxing head on. You're still working with lots of young boxers very much at their peak. Do they still talk about this man?
They certainly do, and in the age that you can buy DVDs and watch films of Muhammad Ali, they are still inspired by him. His style and the way he fought, and you know what he brought to boxing and what he brought to sport.
I mean, I suppose you'd have been unemployed if you were working with Muhammad Ali because you didn't need much promoting, did you?
Well, he was the most promotable fighter, I think, of all time. If you speak to any of the old boxing journalists from those days, all they talk about is how accessible he was. In this day and age, it's very hard to get near sportsmen. I mean, you probably know that yourself, going through agents and whatnot. But if he didn't have an audience, he wasn't happy. And he would sit and talk for hours to journalists and people because he was a people person.
I mean, looking at pictures there with, obviously, Mr. Cooper there, and Muhammad Ali with beautiful looks, great athlete, but he did rub up a few people the wrong way, didn't he?
The first fight against Cooper in this country, I mean, he was getting booed. He was booed into the ring, he was booed out of the ring. And then the second time round, they weren't too happy with the decision. But then he put on a charm offensive because he was one of those type of characters. He played up to the audience. You know, he could be the pantomime villain. He could also be a bit dark at times with people. You know, he certainly had a real bad experience, or not him a bad experience, but he gave Joe Frazier a real bad experience. And Joe Frazier, who passed away last year, never forgave him for that. But he was, you know, he just charmed everybody when he wanted to. He could just do that. He could just turn it on and do that to people. Well,
he's 70 today. I mean, obviously suffering very badly with Parkinson's. I mean, what difference has he made to your sport, and what made sport in general, do you think?
I think in sport he's probably the most iconic sportsman of the 20th century. You know, he's so well respected, so well thought of. I think he won the BBC Sports Personality of the Century. As far as boxing's concerned, it was a bit in the doldrums. Sonny Liston was this ex-convict who was a champion. You know, wasn't really setting the world alight as far as crowds are concerned. He came on the scene, but it took him a few years to actually establish himself. He had to go abroad. He wasn't liked in America, and then suddenly, after when he came back after being banned from boxing, the new era of TV dawned, and he then became a massive pay-per-view fighter. In those days, it was, you know, big fights around the world were broadcast into cinemas, and the same thing into the States. You'd have the live event, then the event put into cinemas, which turned the sport into as far as generating income concerned, into a different league altogether. And he inspired that.
After the Olympics, he obviously wanted to make a difference, talking about putting black people on equal terms in sport and in America and across the world. Does he still have that influence, do you think? Does he still have that influence in making that change? People still say, Muhammad Ali did it, we can do it.
Well, I think he did, and he certainly was one of the pioneers. I mean, you know, at that time, I remember, you know, one of the Olympic Games, that you had the Black Power movement, all the guys gave the salute after they won medals. But he was the one that actually did it. He actually was the one who stood up, one of the first people to stand up as a sportsman and say, you know, something has to be done for the black people in America. We're not standing for this anymore. And he did that, and he was reviled by a certain section of America. But certainly in this country at that stage, he became a really well-liked character. I mean, I think the British Boxing Board of Control were the only organisation, when he was stripped of his title, to not actually, you know, to not say he weren't world champion. You know, he had to lose his title in the ring rather than through political methods.
Well, Frank, thank you very much indeed. Lovely to talk about a man, obviously still very much with us and still has that presence. I mean, if you think about 13-year-olds, 10-year-olds going into the gym and still people knowing who he is. Yeah. And some amazing photographs in the newspapers still.
Well, we're showing some more, aren't we, a little later on, and highlights from his career and things, yes.
About 8:30, I think.
About 8:30, yeah. Thanks, Frank.
Pleasure.